I think I'll start now, if that's all right. Yeah, okay. Peace, mercy, and blessings, members of the decentralized movement. This is AfroFinLab. This week, we're talking mesh networks, blockchain, and more. As always, we're going to get this crypto nonsense to start making sense. Joining us as our expert guest this week, we have Roberto Morano, a stake pool operator of La Repsistance stake pool. He's also a co-founder of Gimba Labs, along with our regular panelist, James, and he worked at Emergo. This week, as our guest referee, we have Azeez. He's a Nigerian living in Ireland, and of course, that's his connection to the diaspora. So last week, we talked about the problems of blockchain, and one of the things that really came up was this issue of access and being able to get connected. So mesh networks are something of a solution to that issue. So we'll be diving into that this week. Oh, that's my part done. Everyone else, please jump in. Yeah, so maybe someone can give us an introduction of what mesh networks are.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Roberto. That's great.
Okay, so mesh networks are like a different approach to organize how we connect. It's like literally a mesh where there is a single path to reach a website, let's say a website or whatever, because the routes are dynamic and are managed by the network itself to find the most efficient way to reach the destination. It's not a type of network we are used because we are used to have our own provider, which at the same time connects to tier one providers that manage the most of the traffic of internet. But its mesh networks is a technology that it's arising these days because we have on our pockets powerful computers that we hadn't when the internet was established, and now we are thinking about new ways to connect everybody in this globe. And I'm really passionate about them because they give us the users of the internet or the network, because the network is built by all of us, the servers and the clients, and we need, or will be cool to get ownership of the internet. So this type of technology is very, very interesting to give us back the power of setting the rules in the same way that we are thinking about getting the power of our value with blockchain technology. Yeah, that's more or less what I feel when I think of mesh networks.
So Roberto, I have a question for you. So are mesh networks, are they decentralized? Is that kind of like the nature of a mesh network, is that it is decentralized, or yeah?
In the beginning, that's the idea, to make a decentralized network which is controlled by many different peers on the network, but it can coexist with current networks. But ideally, I think like neurons and synapse, it will be nice to have a global mesh network which is completely decentralized. We don't have the need to go fully decentralized to have a mesh networks, and you can have different mesh networks on different villages and then connect them through legacy systems of the current internet. But yeah, the final idea is to have a network that is completely governed and in a decentralized way. That will be the utopia for.
Is the internet a mesh network then, in a sense, or what makes a mesh network different from the internet?
Currently, it's totally centralized. You can, well, there are initiatives where you could join a Wi-Fi network. Like I'm connected through a very local provider that has their own mesh network of Wi-Fi routers. I'm living in a rural area in south of Spain, so that's the only. Well, I could have mobile connections, but this local provider is my single decent way to get connected. But in the end, you are connected to a provider, which then has another greater high-speed connection from another big provider. That's all the way to the cloud servers on AWS, Amazon, or Google Cloud, or whatever. It's not, you don't have choices to join internet independently with just a wireless device. Why not? Also, there is another great advantage of this kind of networks. If we ever get to have a global network deployed like this, and is that it will be censorship resistant, because for example, here in Spain, there is a big provider which is called Telefonica. Maybe some of you know it because it operates almost everywhere. It used to be a public company from the government, but then they privatized it, and they basically, all the traffic of Spain goes through their transit, the infrastructure, and they have the right on their service agreement. They have the right to inspect the traffic, and I don't know, maybe just shut down some traffic that doesn't make sense for them or doesn't make profit for them. It's something that may happen, and if we get back the power to the users on a decentralized network, it will be much more difficult to do those type of attacks.
So are cell phones the only way to do it? I mean, does this mean we have to count on people to use their phones in participating, or are there other ways to get people involved?
I know a very nice initiative from Africa, which is called Village Telco, and it wasn't relying on mobile phones for creating mesh networks. They invented the potato routers. Those routers will automatically connect on a mesh network, and you only will need to have one potato connected to the internet, and then all these potatoes will be like your regular Wi-Fi access points. And that's another different approach that it's based on landline connections, which I think it's the first step we will need to take to cover areas that where the internet is very limited. Like it's only, you have only one point of connection through the internet in one village, little village.
Roberto, did I hear you
yeah.
right? Did you say potato?
Yeah, they call potato routers. That's the, the name they chose.
Oh,
And
okay,
at
so
the-
it's a type of
the-
root. It's not like they somehow did something with like an actual potato and then used it to like
No,
make, because that's what
Oh, I
well-
thought they used the actual potato.
the root. Oh,
well, it was potato cited, but it was a root.
So what most of the can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I posted like World Mobile, and they're building a hybrid mesh network across sub-Saharan Africa as well. They're just using an app that they built and a SIM card that you put into your mobile device that will then basically serve as a node that joins their mesh network. And the idea is if you get 700 million people across sub-Saharan Africa to each run a node, then you can partner with the telecoms and basically build a hybrid kind of private / decentralized mesh network. That's what they're working on. And I was talking to one of their global ambassadors earlier today, and thinking about some of the concepts that we have around mesh networks for Cardano, and the potential to implement one of those in West Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, and these type of places, as well as sub-Saharan Africa and South Africa. But I think that it's going to be through something like a SIM card that connects to the mobile network, and then in a connection with the telecom providers. I just think that the kind of public-private joint ventures make the most sense when it comes to trying to implement something at the scale of like a mesh network. But yeah, interesting concepts out there.
Yep. Also, there is huge limitations to use our mobile or current Android or iOS iPhones. We cannot get to the low-level hardware, so it's not really feasible to use them as routers. So there are some initiatives building on top of the Android application level to do these things, and so you need specialized applications to use the mesh, to take advantage of the mesh. But yeah, I think one first step for the mobile ecosystem of these mesh networks will be to collaborate with some angel operators.
Angel operators.
Yeah,
So I
there are
know-
some.
So Roberto, I know you sent a little information over about Right Mesh. Can you give us an idea of how Right Mesh works and why you think it's a good solution? The problems that they've been able to solve, and yeah.
Yeah, Right Mesh is based on Ethereum for some tokenomics. That's the part that, as a technical person, interests me less from the project, but from the technical perspective, they are using three kind of networks of connections. I mean, they use Bluetooth, they use Wi-Fi direct, and I think regular Wi-Fi access point mode. This way, they build three gateways through the other users of Right Mesh, and you can have more heterogeneous mesh, more redundant or resilient network. That's a project I was mentioning when I said you have limitations on Android. You cannot use the Wi-Fi chipset to establish internet routes. So they built an application that uses Bluetooth, Wi-Fi direct, and Wi-Fi access point to allow special applications to go either one of those routes. And that's, from my understanding, that's very limited because you need application that really takes advantage of this network routing. That's not the idea of, or not my idea of using our day-to-day mobile phones to build a network. But it is what it is, and at this moment, if we cannot have anything like DC told about having a special SIM that with some ability from the operator. Yeah, we are like jailed to that right mesh approach. Then I'm sure there are many other projects, maybe creating some firmware, some specialized Android version with tuned Linux kernel, which allows you to do some stuff on the right way, even though right mesh is right. Yeah, there is another commercial venture that is called BulkFi, I think. They use their own smartphone with their own firmware, and they can tune the Wi-Fi chipset to implement this network in the proper way, or in the efficient, or in the standard TCP/IP way.
So Rob,
I'm just going to jump in. Sorry, I just want to jump in with a question from our attendees. It's a question for Roberto, and it's asking whether mesh networks have been successfully deployed anywhere.
As far as I know, these guys from Right Mesh are deploying in India. Village Telco, which was the landline mesh approach, successfully deployed on many different, well, not maybe not many, but like a dozen of village in Africa, and I think in Latin America also. Yeah, we have some examples, but I guess we need to perform real world tests where very limited, where is very low density of devices, and where there are high density of devices, because noise, radio signal noise, I guess will be, I'm not a telecommunications engineer, but I guess it might impact in the performance of these networks, because yeah, dynamically calculating the best route to reach a website, that takes time, computing time. Yeah, it's a very complex technology that maybe it's not ready yet to be deployed worldwide.
it sounds like,
But
based on, oh, I'm sorry. Based on what you're saying, it sounds like we're quite a ways off from a, you know, like a truly, I guess you would say, decentralized mesh network. It seems, based on what you're saying right now, our internet access is only available through centralized ISPs or whatnot. But the idea of a decentralized network, number one, hasn't even really been conceived of yet, and is a little bit further out into the future for us.
right. But we can still build some little mesh networks and connect them and start working on building this new model.
Would it make sense? And I won't continue asking questions, but would it make sense, because I was looking at some information on the smallest servers that are available today. Like they have the smallest one that I heard was like a server that was the size of a pin, or no, it was a match head. And then there was another one that was like the server that was the size of a, you know, a small, like a penny. Because at the end of the day, that's all the internet is, right? I mean, there's the moving of the data across, you know, from, you know, through TCP/IP, you know, from machine to machine. But at the end of the day, they're just servers that are being connected together. Do you think that, you know, kind of moving from just having this network connected between mobile devices or any other type of devices to moving where we can, you know, store information? Because now Filecoin is, or the interplanetary file system is, you know, it's a reality now. It's something that's out there where we can store data in a decentralized way, and then also maybe have, you know, these small kind of servers that would, it would be a static, kind of a static mesh network, because you couldn't move with it, but, you know, maybe be able to look at that as a way of maybe decentralizing a mesh network.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
I imagine, well, I sometimes imagine any content that it's alive on internet, that it's used, that it's requested by some user, it has an intrinsic value and should be preserved. So I sometimes imagine IPFS like being on any of our devices, like by default. Yeah, like internet could be like I don't know, something alive, that it's organically alive, while someone wants some piece of information or value, it's valuable, so it should be preserved. Else, maybe we can just throw it away. That will reduce nonsense use of storage or something like that. That's a weird idea. I always had. I'm glad that somehow connects to yours.
Well,
I have a lot of weird ideas.
Wanted to check in with Azeez, like, as our guest referee, like making sure like we're not getting too technical. Like, how, like, is this making sense?
Could you say it again, please?
Oh, I was checking in with our guest referee to make sure we're not getting too technical and making sure that this makes sense to him.
To me, it is making sense, but I guess I'm just a bit confused of like, how can you make it work without the internet for people who like don't have access to the internet? Like, it sounds like it's something where people would be able to communicate on if there was no access to the internet, but it sounds like they need the internet first to make it happen.
Still need that pathway in. That's right.
Yeah.
Still need to be connected to the outside world somewhere.
And that could be an issue in some countries when, you know, maybe their internet service provider is not giving them access to certain aspects of the internet or whatever it may be. So that's the part I don't get, I guess.
That's somehow, if we start thinking on rebuilding how communications work, we could have, I mean, when you send a message through Facebook Messenger, it goes through your provider, then through the transit, the global transit providers, then to Google Cloud infrastructure, then finds the user you want to send the message and says, okay, then all the way back, it's sent through the internet. Does that make sense if you and me are in the same room? No, but that's the way we build this. With this kind of networks, like thinking about our devices like neurons, it could work in a different way. And even though you wouldn't be able to reach a user on Latin America, you will benefit from being connected on your area without the dependency of any other infrastructure provider. And that's how internet born and already had a real good value.
So can I ask a question? Does a mesh network then get stronger, I guess, with the more people using it?
Yeah, you will have more pathways to reach whatever you want to reach. So yeah, it will be a more dense network, a more dense net.
Okay.
I wonder how, sorry, I just want to say, I wonder how this would work with, like, there's some proposals right now in the Cardano Project Catalyst Fund for building a decentralized cloud and like decentralized cloud services and I just feel like something like a mesh network that's going to be decentralized, depends on different nodes around the globe, distributed, running the protocol. How can that tie into what these different projects are looking to build? It might have some synergies we should try to explore.
Yeah.
In my mind, I make connections to the stake pools as well, right?
Yep.
So listening to Roberto talk about what a node does on a mesh network, it sounds pretty much like what Cardano is asking stake pool operators to do. And that kind of raises the question, all right, it sounds like a lot of research has been done in terms of designing an incentive structure that makes people want to run and delegate to stake pools. So same question, can we use any of what we've learned about incentives and apply it to mesh networks? What parts make the most sense? Do we have to change the incentives in some way to make it work?
Yes, the answer is 100% yes. We can use incentives to make, I call them just mini service providers, the stake pools, because that's kind of what they are.
Right.
Why can't we incentivize them to run a mesh network protocol? They can also be running their staking infrastructure, right? Ouroboros it's green in that you can do more than just run Ouroboros. It doesn't take up all of your computing, needs and capacity. You can run Oracle pools, and you can run this mesh network protocol and all these other things using the same infrastructure that you've set up just to run Ouroboros. So that's kind of interesting. Or Cardano node, I guess is what they call it. But yeah, we should explore that.
With you saying that, I think I've now realized like how powerful the stake pools are, even more so. Like I guess I never put that together. Like each stake pool is so powerful that it could be running all sorts of different protocols that could just make the whole Cardano ecosystem even stronger and more robust and more capable of doing things. Mm-hmm. So I guess this is why people say like Cardano is so scalable, I guess, in that sense.
We're using them. We're like, even for our Oracle pools, like the stake pool operators will provide accurate price feeds for all of the different liquid markets. So the liquid ADA pool, the liquid US dollar, the liquid Naira pool. We need Oracle pools who are just going to be the stake pool operators coming in and running, a set of basically a program that we built for them that says, this is an Oracle program that can track from the top 10 exchanges what the price of this asset is at this time. If you run this honestly, we'll delegate the ADA in these pools to your staking pool. So you're basically incentivizing them to use their infrastructure to give you the exact thing you need, in this case, price data. And you can do that for so many different things. You can do that for the end users of the system itself, not even the service providers. So it's all just incentives. Show me the incentives and I can show you the outcome. Mm-hmm. But disincentives are actually equally as important when you start talking about service providers. So in this case, mesh networks, right? How do you have something like what do you call it in traditional kind of IT, like an SLA, right? Like a service level agreement. How do you produce that on chain where you say, okay, if this mesh network node or the telecom that helps us set up this hybrid node goes down, they get slashed a certain percent. It's kind of like what the Oracle pools do. If you don't provide good, accurate data, you get slashed as like a disincentive. So how can you build those into the system as well? That's a more robust model than just even saying we only have incentives. We also have disincentives for doing the wrong thing or providing bad data or going down. Mm-hmm. So
keeps the status quo then.
Yeah, I've got to cut in. Getting like questions from the audience. Essentially, what is an Oracle pool? I mean, you've said it a couple of times, and
just gives you price feed data. It's just so the blockchain itself can't tell you what the price of ADA is at a certain time. You need certain nodes to tell you that, because that's data that doesn't live on a blockchain. It lives in the real world. Oracle pools allow you to bring real world data into the blockchain. That's all it does.
Okay.
So question, what other kind of information could you get from an Oracle pool? Is it only price information for like a price of a stock or a token, or?
Not at all. Price information is like you can think of it as the most basic, like rudimentary level of oracles possible. You could build an oracle that says, what's the temperature in London on, Monday, whatever, November 1st or whatever it is. So, right. So you can build different oracles that say who's going to win the US election at X time. And you can build betting markets around that. You can build oracles for insurance that say if something defaults, if 10 people attest to this, like, fire that happened, and this insurance policy pays out X person who had this policy. You can build Oracle pools for anything that requires information that lives in the real world that needs to be attested to come and make decisions onto the blockchain. In fact, if you use Marlowe the right way, you can have your oracle actually as a role within the smart contract. Meaning the oracle that takes in the data that says, okay, the price of ADA is now 11 cents. If I was betting on the price of ADA going up, that oracle can just pay me out some money according to the predefined contract. If it goes down, it pays the other person. So you can have oracles actually make decisions in the contracts themselves based on the information that you're bringing in. And again, it's all predefined. It's all the contract terms that both parties agree to. It's just the oracle on chain that's executing it based on what happens in the real world. That's all it is.
All right, so
This seems
oracles are like they bring in information from the real world, but in the case of mesh networks, why is an oracle pool necessary? Why is it important?
It might not be. I was talking about liquid. I was talking about price feed data. So mesh networks, it might not be that important at all. It all depends on what you actually need. Mesh networks, you probably need just a node who can operate. If it's a hardware, whatever it is, it's a different set of requirements than when you're talking about like liquid as like a lending market. So I agree, Azeezat, you might not need oracle pools.
I think that's a strong point that you make, though, and maybe definitely a point for another show. But oracle pools are they're very important, right? Because on the blockchain, it's like this digital world that's contained to itself. It can only do what's in that world, which is creating blocks and adding transactions to blocks. So anything that you want to get from the outside world, that comes through an oracle. So, I mean, I've had conversations with folks about this before. Like, for instance, we have all of the disinformation that happens on social networks. We can't trust, posts, basically. But if you have an oracle pool, yeah, if you have an oracle pool that has trust, in a sense, you learn to trust this particular oracle pool, and this oracle pool is basically injecting information into a network, a blockchain network, we'll say. You can come to trust that oracle pool and the information coming from that oracle pool. So I think, like, as we continue to move into the future, I just really think that getting information, trusted information from the outside, is going to be huge, and the oracle pools are what allow us to do it.
All right, so like, what does that mean? What does that mean on the ground today? What does that mean for, let's say, places like Nigeria, places like Cameroon, places like Congo? Like, what does that mean on the ground today? Like,
Can I jump in?
Ahead. Yeah,
well,
please.
So I mean, this question about will oracle pools play a role in mesh networks kind of connects back to Azeez's question about how do you get the internet onto the mesh network in the first place. And bear with me here, I'm not an expert on this, but it seems to me that in the places where mesh networks are going to be the most valuable, right? The places where there's just not a stable commercial internet provider, right? As much as living here in the United States, I might like to have a little more privacy or a little bit more, resistance to centralization, that kind of thing. Those are nice to haves because at the end of the day, my internet connection is good enough here. We're talking about this as a solution to what's happening on the ground in Nigeria right now, where, for example, one of the reasons a mesh network is important is because anything I put up could be torn down by authorities, right? That's why I like this idea of a potato. Like if we could disguise the nodes as potatoes, right? Or what Sidney was saying about tiny servers, right? They got to be small or disguised, or they've got to be a phone in our pocket, right? Now, bring in the real world data. What is the political scene like in a place right now? Is the temperature rising a little bit? And if we hear from on the ground that maybe things are whatever, authorities are starting to crack down on this or that, maybe that's something that a global community can turn some lever on. And I don't have a fully formed thought there, but just this idea that, hey, as participants in this, when we see that trouble's brewing somewhere, is there a way for us to kind of take that information and make the network more robust in some way?
Mm-hmm.
how would you do that?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Got to ask the question first, but yeah, figuring it out, that's a challenge.
Yeah, I was just looking at because I haven't really done any real investigation into IPFS, which is the interplanetary file system. So
That's
basically, yeah, I know, and it's a wow. It deserves a wow because the person that created is a brilliant person. Basically, it's so the internet is just it's just storage. And there's a protocol that allows information to be sent across the network and to be decoded on the other side of the network. At the end of the day, when you build a website, you're just storing files on a computer. And then someone else can request those files. And when they request those files, the internet will say, oh, okay. Or your computer will say, okay, they just sent me this file and it's a HTTP or HTTPS type of file. Let me, based on HTTPS, let me render this file so the person can see it. So at the end of the day, it's storage. Just computer storage talking to other computer storage.
I
So
can
I was
kind
just thinking,
of, sorry, just jumping in is because like in my mind now, I'm kind of seeing how that could, how mesh work, how mesh networks and the internet, how they're the parallel. Because it's like if it's just sending information, if it's just like okay, here's this file, now I can see it, then it like could it replace the internet? Like
well, I think that's the hope of the project. So the interplanetary file system, that is what they're seeking to do, is to replace the current nature of our internet with a new Web3 internet, I guess you could say, where it's decentralized, but you still can access websites or content or information the same way that you access websites or content or information through our current internet system.
okay, so like now there's like a really interesting question. It says to Azeez's point, is mesh network a decentralized way to access the internet? And if the answer is yes, is there a way to bypass the government controlled accessibility of the internet? That's to everyone.
I'll jump in there and I'll say that no, it's not yet a decentralized. Mesh networks are not yet decentralized, and the only way that you can share the type of information that we're talking about when we're talking about the type of information that you get from the internet, you do have to go through, an ISP. Whether that ISP is state sponsored or private organization, you do have to go through an internet service provider in order to get the files from the internet.
Somebody said, what about GoTenna?
Ah.
Well, Gotenna is not. They're not looking to push data across the internet the way that we use the internet today. So it does create, in a sense, a decentralized network that's not connected to a mobile tower or a cell phone tower. But it's primarily used for like sending SMS messages and things like that
GoTenna, those like they're those little things that people put on the end of their backpacks, right? They're kind of like
now.
yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So I think as far as what I know after kind of reviewing it like yesterday, that they yeah, you can send SMS messages through them. I'm not even sure you can send MMS messages, but it's not the same as the internet protocol where you can, there's a HTTP document that you can request and pull it down and be able to view that document. It's just a little different kind of technology, but the GoTenna is, I think probably you would be able to consider that more of kind of like a decentralized network because it doesn't have a central, um, you know, access point.
So another question we've got is if we have to go through the ISP, Internet Service Providers, for anyone else who lose track with all these acronyms, if we have to go through the ISP, then why is mesh network a revolution in any sense of the word?
It's an early revolution. Well, it's a revolution in an early stage. So, like like I said, we could have mesh networks in our village. Don't use internet to communicate with our neighborhoods. And that will be a revolution already, because we will be sure that there is no censorship by part of any government or organization, and that's a revolution, and that's my connection actually. That's I could connect directly to my neighborhoods through these Wi-Fi antennas this little provider has. It's part of the internet, is the last mile of the internet here, but we are independent. Yeah, that's a revolution for me, because it's a different way of sending and receiving the information without paying even. You don't have to pay to send me something through Bluetooth. Imagine that between all your neighbors.
I mean, I can see that being like a big thing as well. The like not having to pay, because one of the things is like a lot of these, I don't know, these new technologies. So it seems to me is that there's always a cost involved. There's always some sort of like, you know, like 0.0000 at the end of the price point. So I mean, are we saying mesh network is sort of like a like cost wise, we're saying it's more accessible?
Yeah, indeed. We have some place for tokenomics there, because in the end you are lending your battery, your Wi-Fi chipset computing time, and that's something you could sell or rent. That will lead us to a scenario where we could have I don't know, oracles saying this area is having a nice throughput of bandwidth, and the price or yeah, well, the price will be a consequence of that scenario, and that will be the mesh network auto-regulating, not a central authority saying, hey, upload bandwidth is more expensive than download bandwidth. I don't know if you have ever had a connection where you had a limitation on upload bandwidth. I had with my previous 4G connection here. This meeting wouldn't be possible with that with the restriction, because my upload bandwidth was ridiculously low. That's just because for them, I mean, they have 100 megabits of throughput of bandwidth, and they say, okay, if most of the consumption of internet currently is for download content from Netflix or whatever. So if I reserve 90 of the 100 megabits for download, and then just 10 megabits for upload, users will need to pay me that, because that will allow them to sell to 90 customers, because we mostly use download, but that leaves us as customer on a position where we need to pay more for upload bandwidth, and it's just bandwidth. It's not really upload or download. Well, there might be some technical limitations on the hardware equipment, but mostly it's just bandwidth, and the providers use the bandwidth on their own benefit, not on the customer's benefit. And they play with these rules. And on a mesh network, we could have oracles that could tell us, okay, these are the metrics for the network. We could establish rules for the pricing of the network. We will decide, not some central private company.
Just sitting up there and saying, this is it from on top of the mountain.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that idea of that information driving a market. This actually, it sounds like we're almost talking about bandwidth liquidity pools at this point, right? You're talking about, hey, there's not enough of this resource here. Although my mind struggles to not see kind of bad actors turning lights on and off just to make the price go up, right? I would worry about that part if I know I can make bandwidth more valuable.
Incentives, right? Let's go back.
Exactly.
Yeah, you disincentivize that. You slash them. You
Exactly.
do make sure it's known that if you make it as hard to do that with profitability as it is to just act honestly in the system and just gain the token, whatever that is. So it's all incentives. But James, to your point, you summed it up beautifully. It's just bandwidth liquidity pool,
which is brilliant,
which is amazing, which is
amazing.
So cool.
Absolutely.
I think it's an innovation. I think it's a 0 to 1 in terms of what you have right now with internet access in places, across sub-Saharan Africa and India. So it's no question of, is this something that we should do or innovate on? It's how can we implement this on Cardano in a way that gives everyone access to this protocol. But yeah, this is cool stuff. Seriously.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Bandwidth liquidity pools.
It's what it is, I think. It's literally what. Sorry, Azeezat, my bad.
No, it's all right. I just want to jump in. I'll check in.
Sure.
What some of the things that Aziz wanted to talk about today, and one thing I saw was hot versus cold wallets. I don't even know what that is. I don't know what anything is, but
That's a good question. I can take a crack at it. So the concept of like owning a wallet that has the full blockchain history on it, or what we call like a full node, that gives you the ability to verify every single transaction that's taking place on that blockchain in its history up until this point. So that's what you get with like Daedalus. So we call that like a full node wallet, right? You can connect Daedalus to a cold storage wallet, which is usually a hardware device like a ledger or a Trezor. That's giving you
you can connect what to what? Slower, please.
So Daedalus is a wallet that you get. It's a full node wallet on Cardano. You can connect it to a hardware wallet. It's called Ledger or Trezor. You can just buy them off Amazon. And those are called cold storage devices, right? Okay. There you go. Roberto has one right in front of you. I have one in my room.
Yep, I got a few of them too.
Yeah, I've got one too.
Somewhere around here.
but you don't need to have a cold storage wallet. Daedalus is plenty good. I only use Daedalus for most of my funds, and it's a very secure full node wallet. You can use Yoroi, which is what I consider a hot wallet. And James, Sidney, correct me if I'm wrong, but my definition of a hot wallet just means you're not storing the entire blockchain. You're just storing or you're using their service providers. So in the case of Yoroi, they're just hosting on Amazon, and they're actually connecting to the blockchain through them. So you're not actually running the full node when you connect to your Yoroi wallet. You're just trusting that Emergo servers can run the full Cardano blockchain and give you access to your balance. So it's a middleman type of deal.
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Roberto or James.
My understanding is that's full versus light you just described.
Yeah, it is. It is. Hot versus cold might be a little different. Is that like ledger versus?
I think cold. Yeah, cold is when your keys are not on a computer, right? There's no reference to your funds on a computer.
So a ledger.
Exactly.
Right? Does that count? And paper wallets have been popular at different points.
Paper wallets are cold wallets.
Paper wallets. Well. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So anything that's above just the base wallet, like you can connect a ledger to your Yoroi wallet, right? Because you can say, I want my Yoroi keys to be on this cold storage ledger device.
Wait, so a cold storage ledger device, it could be like a USB. It could be like something.
It's similar to a USB. It's a specific device that's called a cold storage wallet, but it actually looks just like a USB key. Right. But to James's point, it's not exposed to the network. It's not on the network. It can't be hacked. Anything.
It's not heated up by a computer. Like you don't plug it in. It doesn't get hot. Like I'm trying to make
it's just
these little wallets, the hardware wallets, they have private keys on a little tiny screen, right? But that screen has never been on the internet, right? So when you set up a Daedalus wallet, it's hot, because you're connected to the internet right now. And so when you start a new wallet, your secret words are up on the screen for as long as it takes you to write them down somewhere. And in that time, if your computer has been compromised, somebody else could have spied on those words. And now they're going to have access to whatever funds you put into that wallet, right? That was hot, right? So the hot refers to, has it ever been on an internet network, right? There's ways to avoid ever exposing those words to a network. And when it comes to like stake pool operators, for example, the best among them have ensured that, you know, the private keys to their stake pool have never even had a chance to be compromised. All right, and there's really advanced ways to do that. Charles Hoskinson made a long video about going to a pretty high level with that stuff. And I mean, that was right on the edge of, I think, broad accessibility, what he shared there. But you can go pretty deep into, you know, keeping your most important key to the network in a cold environment.
And it's recommended that you do that, actually. Everyone should have cold storage, because you don't want your private keys exposed to the network. And there's really three kind of wallets that you can have. There's an exchange wallet, which of course it's recommended that you don't keep your tokens on an exchange, because if the exchange is hacked, then you're just kind of out of luck. And then you have your hot wallet.
Burning up, we could say. Those are burning hot, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. So the next best thing, instead of having your money on an exchange like Binance or Coinbase or any of these other types of exchanges.
Like Binance and Coinbase are exchange wallets?
Those are exchanges. You have a wallet. Yeah. So each exchange, like for each token, you have a specific. So like on Binance, you have a Cardano wallet on Binance. Yeah. Or if you have Bitcoin.
ADA wallet, and you have a Bitcoin wallet.
Exactly. They're all different wallets. That's why it's a little challenging to build and run exchanges, because you really have to have a wallet for each different protocol. So it takes a lot of work to do that. And then you have some other hot wallets that we'll call them. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard of Exodus. Is one. Jax is another one. And these are wallets that are they're not exchange wallets. They're software wallets. You download the software to your computer, and then you can store you can move your tokens, let's say, from the exchange to this software wallet.
Daedalus as well.
What was that?
Is Daedalus one of those as well?
I think Daedalus is kind of a different beast in a way, because it's a node. It's actually a node on the network, on the Cardano network. So Daedalus is a wallet for sure, and it's a wallet that sits on your computer, but it's a little bit different than, I think, what we call these hot wallets. Because these hot wallets it's just like software. It's like you download a software, and in that software you can store your Ethereum, you can store your Cardano, you know, in any of the tokens that.
Is it
that
like
this wallet
you know, like those things that run like Apple, no, they run like Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, like you download it, like I'm trying, because I have to understand it in like things that are like real to me and not things that are like cool. But is it like downloading one of those programs where you can tweet and you can like post
you
your
can connect
Instagram,
your account to it, your Twitter. That's the same kind of concept in a way, where you can have these different, you know, tokens or protocols that are inside the wallet, and they're stored on your computer, and the private key is there as well. So there's some safety to it, just as long as because I used to use hot wallets. I would just disconnect my computer from the network when I got off. That way, if my network was, if somehow my network got compromised, that they couldn't get to my computer, because if they can get to my computer, they're probably going to, you know, So I just disconnected it. Yeah.
And also,
so could I ask?
Yeah, go ahead, please. Please, no.
So what about with Uriah? Because I kind of got confused as to whether or not that is like a cold or a hot or a medium wallet. Because I use Uriah, but with my ledger, and to send money to myself, to send like ADA tokens to myself, I don't really need my ledger, but I know to send money out, that's when my ledger comes in, and that's where I see the security with the ledger.
And it just lets you look on the blockchain. That's all Ledger does. That's all. I don't know if any of you guys ever used Mu, which was my Ethernet wallet. I mean, that was like a popular way of storing tokens. So your tokens are not stored in Yoroi. Yoroi is just a picture. It lets you see the blockchain. It lets you see the Cardano blockchain. But your tokens are stored on the blockchain. They're not stored in Yoroi. They're in, same with Daedalus. You know, your tokens are not in Daedalus. Daedalus is just a window into the Cardano blockchain.
So can your ADA ever be taken off the blockchain?
Only if you have the spending password and the private key. Other than that, it's there for it's there.
So yeah, so what you're protecting is your private key with those cold storage wallets. To answer your question, I don't know if you consider Yoroi a hot or cold. I just think of the difference between a light storage in terms of Yoroi being a system that you don't have to download the full blockchain, and Daedalus being a full node, so you actually do have a full history of the blockchain. The hot and cold, that kind of more applies to like, okay, get your funds off an exchange. Those are all hot wallets, and get them into an environment where it's like you have Azeez where you have Yoroi with the ledger device, so that you have maximum security, right? Your private keys that control those funds are now offline in your ledger device. So that's kind of the whole security concept.
And that's probably a good, something for us to like talk about more, because at the end of the day, I mean, all of this stuff is really cool, but the security and how you manage your private keys is like so important, because you could lose everything if you don't understand how to do that.
Definitely. Like I see in Reddit forums, like people saying, "Oh, I lost all my coins," and it's just like, wow, that's some scary stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And
it needs to get better.
Crazy about that? What's crazy? I mean, so there's no accounts on the Cardano blockchain. There's only transactions, right? And so all you're able to say is, look, like this transaction is connected to this address here, and this address has that much of it. When people say I lost it, all they're saying is I lost my way of accessing that transaction that's mine, right? Okay. And so as long as you keep those words, and that's something, as I've been talking more people into like downloading wallets, getting started with this stuff, I make sure, like, look them in the eye, like make sure they understand how important these words are, right? And that's a really hard thing to get your mind around. We're kind of used to it maybe with the keys to your house, right? Or there's different sorts of security that we're used to. People aren't used to how important a couple of words written on a sheet of paper might be, right? And that's, I think we have a real responsibility to help people really understand that. Another way to think about the difference between Daedalus and Yoroi is just what they're going to be used for in the future. So one thing, Daedalus, my understanding about what it's going to be years from now is it's going to be the place where you can grab apps, right? Decentralized applications that allow you to do any number of things with the blockchain. It might look very similar to an app store, okay? There's all this deep functionality, interaction, value creation, et cetera, et cetera. And you might have most of your ADA in there because that's what helps you generate value. This is why we have this stuff in the first place, so we can do things with different applications. One of those applications, of course, is just spending, right? Being able to just transact on a daily basis. And that's where having Yoroi on your phone comes in, right? So I keep a little bit of ADA on Yoroi on my phone, just so I can give it to people in the real world sometimes, right? Just so, I mean, someday I'm going to be able to use my Yoroi wallet at the grocery store, right? And pay in ADA. And so one way, you might even think of like Yoroi as your debit card or your checking account. And then Daedalus is kind of a cross between a savings account, but also some, your
brokerage account or something.
It's something brand new entirely because it has so much utility. We're just not using it that way quite yet.
Yeah, Yoroi too, though. They're building already like a MetaMask like interface that's going to let people spend ADA on different dApps through Yoroi. So I think even a connection into Ergo, like, guys, we're really at the start of this, in between like the functionality that these wallets will have built into them, especially Daedalus and Yoroi. you'll basically be able to access the entire Cardano verse of dApps and protocols just through these wallets, because it'll all be built in.
You know,
I know. Well,
oh, go ahead, Sydney.
oh no, go ahead, Azeezat.
All right. Well, I was gonna say, like, that's such an oh, lost my train of thought. But like, you know, that whole idea of like we're really at the start of things, and like I think for me it's that whole thing. I think I talk about this every episode. The possibilities are endless. So we've actually got a question here that says, how would you describe the blockchain ecosystem right now? And how will the activities going on within it impact the world in the next 5 years? So,
it's a good one. I'll take a stab. I think everyone should take a stab.
Oh, yeah,
at
for sure.
I'll go first. I'll think that right now you can think of it as the early internet before we got Wi-Fi. Like before we got, you know, Microsoft Office and kind of these base applications that we use every single day now. It was kind of just like a bunch of different protocols trying to build on top of this base internet system, but nothing really of value, nothing that people could use easily every single day. There wasn't that Wi-Fi moment that kind of connected everything and made it all make sense to everyday users. Crypto is basically in the same space. You have Ethereum, you have all these DeFi dApps that are kind of, you know, gaining some hold. This idea of stable money is starting to take off in different places around the world. But nothing is really mainstream consumer facing in terms of its ability to be sticky with its target user. Nothing like Facebook has emerged yet, no social networks, nothing that really uses the blockchain as the root of trust in a way that everyday users will want to access. So we're in between, you know, Wi-Fi and the start of something great, but keep in mind, it's all about being on that path. Like the acceleration of tech, right? These ideas, the concepts behind Moore's law, and the more people that you get in your network as you build these kind of moats around your system, it's inevitable that you're going to get to places where in the next 5 years, a lot of finance will take place on the blockchain, right? Mesh networks will be live across the blockchain, right? Satellite networks, all these different things will go live, but it just takes time to get there, and we're not there yet.
I guess I'll go next. I think for me, with the whole blockchain ecosystem, now I'll let you guys know I only got into blockchain technology probably like 2 months ago. A friend of mine came to me and he started speaking to me about Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies. But I think one thing that I'm starting to really see now is that there are a lot of people in the blockchain space right now because of, I guess, the money making aspect. There are people that are making a lot of money off this, but they're not looking at the technology. And when I guess maybe that fog of, oh, I can make money off cryptocurrency kind of dissimates, and when people begin to really see the technology behind this and what this could do for humanity overall, I think that's when we are going to see a lot of growth. So I think, yeah, right now there's a lot of craze around cryptocurrency, a lot of craze around blockchain, but a lot of people don't really understand what this technology can really do for people. And like sometimes I'm even talking to people about that, and I can see if they're looking at me like I'm crazy, but like I'm like, forget the money, completely forget about the money, and actually look at the technology and how we can create better accountability within our world. Because right now, with the backdrop of the pandemic, we are seeing so many issues in our world that are, I think the source of their issues is that there is no accountability, and blockchain technology can create that. So I think it is really and truly like, with everything that's going on right now, this is going to be the thing that will get us to the next space. Everybody's sitting around right now, I think, questioning, how are we going to fix these issues? How are we going to solve them? And a lot of people don't realize that it's blockchain. Like really and truly, I think it's blockchain that is going to solve a lot of these issues. So that's how I feel about it now and where I think it's going to go. It's just a matter of time, I think.
I just want to say that's amazing that you've been in the space 2 months and that's where you are with blockchain. You know, it really is. I mean, because that's really powerful.
That's a matter of me like waking up every day, reading articles. I think even if you don't fully understand it, the more you read articles and watch videos, you begin to pick up the jargon, and then it starts to make a whole lot of sense. And then it's almost like you're just looking at business ideas, and you're just like, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. I'll put money into that idea. That's what it becomes, I think. But I guess that comes from me because I studied business and management, so that's how I kind of took my route with it. I'm not like, I don't have any background in tech or anything like that. So yeah.
Yeah, Brilliant. I really think that's brilliant. Yeah.
All right, so 5 years from now, the ecosystem will have Aziz as a leading visionary. This is it all. Aziz, what do you do right now?
So yeah, I studied business and management, but actually, funny enough, I don't work in that field. I actually model and DJ. But now Ireland has actually just went into a lockdown, so I'm currently unemployed. So I'm just researching a whole lot about crypto.
Sydney, is that you jumping in with your blockchain in 5 years?
I think I'm gonna come in a little bit later. I wanna check in with Roberto. See, I'm curious to know where he's thinking about, how he's thinking about mesh network and, being where he currently lives, and what his vision for the future is regarding blockchain.
I envision that it will feel like magic. We will, in 5 years, we will be to the point that the the technology will be so advanced that people will just use it like we do with credit cards. Like, I don't know, I'm 34, and when I was a child, my brothers started to work. I have two big brothers, which are 15 and 70 years older than me, and they started to work, and they were jealous of the credit cards. They were like, oh, how this works. I don't feel sure to use this for holding my money. And today it's like magic. It works. We assume it's built on something that makes sense, and we even pay with our smartphones, even though smartphones are computers and are subject to attacks. We just trust. And I think in 5 years we will be using ADA, Ether, or whatever cryptocurrency or crypto platform in a seamless way. And probably not even in 5 years, but in 2 or 3 years, because we cannot imagine how the speed of this will grow exponentially. So, yep, magic. It's how we.
I think your point on trust is actually very interesting because it's kind of crazy if you go back in time, the things that we didn't trust at one stage, and then we just begin to trust. So a lot of people are like, cryptocurrency, what's that internet witchcraft you're talking about? But like, it will get to a point where people are just going to be using it and they're not even going to realize. And some people are going to have been learning about this technology beforehand, and next thing you know, some people are going to just be downloading the app and realize, oh, actually, I'm using that technology.
My daughter plays both Roblox and Minecraft. Yeah, the future is changing. It's already changed. I mean, like my generation, where we're gonna probably look at it as some opportunities, but like their generation, it's over. Game over, because that's really all they know right now. The way that they interact with the games that they play, because now they're playing network games with friends. They're exchanging, objects in the games and all of that other kind of stuff. It's going to be so natural for them to be able to use like cryptocurrencies and things like that. And it's going to be something that they can also use for, purchasing real world, like the things that you get in the game, you're going to be able to use to purchase real world things, which is just like mind blowing to me. But I'm on this thing, like it's this idea of unsuppressed creativity. I have no idea where blockchain is going to go, or the other technologies that we have that are converging with blockchain. I mean, you got artificial intelligence, you got 5G, you got augmented reality, you got all of this stuff that's coming out at the same time, and people kind of building these really interesting projects. I do think that blockchain is going to be it's a ledger, right? It records all of this stuff that allows us to communicate with these other networks, and know that everything has been recorded. So like I do like this idea of like because like when I was, growing up, there was always like, okay, we want to cure poverty, we want to make sure, everybody can live, have the American dream, you know, um, you know, make sure that, that there's financial inclusion across the world. And in my lifetime, there has been no technology that even begins to hold a candle to how blockchain is going to be able to help solve those problems. So yeah, I do. There's some projects out there that, like, the people that are in the space right now, the ideas that they come up with and the projects that they come up with, it's like, I don't know who sits around and thinks about these things, but they're brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. And I do think that, like, in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see things that we couldn't even have imagined, because the infrastructure for allowing for this, in a sense, unsuppressed creativity. We have an infrastructure to create now. We can create the world any way that we want it to be. And there's, like, blockchain, I think, has helped to, the internet as well, has helped to lower the resistance and the barriers to being able to, whatever we think about up here, being able to have an kind of an infrastructure in place that will allow for the creation of that thing. So yeah.
And a very important thing about this infrastructure that it's open source, that it's not a dark, obscure black box that Visa or MasterCard or any bank or company runs, and it's just you need to trust it, and that's all. The software is there, and it, with the sufficient knowledge, could put the puzzle together and say, okay, there is no bug here, there is no security risk here. And I think it's a very important part of this revolution, that it's there was an open source revolution some years ago. We came from a past of computers being black boxes from Windows, all the licensing model of software. Nowadays, even Microsoft is one of the greatest contributors to open source software, to Linux kernel. And I think that's the most important part of this. It's auditable, it's accountable, it's there for anyone to study it, to argue, to have arguments with the developers and to improve. That's Cardano, and it's giving a step forward with Catalyst, with Voltaire, because we have many different open source software projects that has an open governance model, but there is no standard, and Cardano is giving a step forward in that direction. Yeah, I think that's it. Open source is important for anything, because knowledge is free. I mean, we are James teaches mathematics, but he was taught by another person, and the knowledge is there from ages. We need to pass it by through generations, and it's the same for software, and it should be the same for important things like internet or the highways of value like Cardano is.
That's really inspiring. There's so many great things that I'm going to want to rewatch that part, Roberto. Thank you for that. But this idea that you just shared about giving people a chance to argue with the developers, that would be a miracle, right? We don't have access to developers who make really important decisions. And I think the open source community has long understood that. And the open source community has also kind of understood the value of their attention, right? And the ability to focus on things in a way that most of us have kind of had to learn through experience. Oh, wow, it actually sucks when I go online and I'm just interrupted by ads all the time, and I'm trying to actually get something done, right? And that's, I think, our collective consciousness. Like we're all now aware that okay, advertising went a little bit too far and we gave up a little too much of our information. And the hope is that we can kind of pull it back from that, right? So I love that idea that maybe if blockchain can help get open source ideals out to more people so that more people can participate in meaningful ways, that's incredible. Aziz, I'm working on a little, we're calling them starter kits, this idea of just like giving people things to mess around with to drive adoption of Cardano. And I'm working on one for people like us about how to talk to your friends and family about Cardano right now. And that's point number one, is exactly what you said. It's not about the money. It's not about the money. No. So I'll give you credit for that idea. I'll pretend it's yours. But you're so right, man. I mean, this is it. This is what it's all about, right? I mean, if you're only looking at the money, you're missing it. You're missing the story.
You're not even reading into like the tech, like, okay, you have the name Bitcoin. You're not even reading what the technology does. You know what I mean? Like, what's the point? Why would you're investing in Amazon? You don't know what Amazon does. Why would you invest in a business you don't even understand? For me, I wouldn't do that, but maybe the next person would.
You're a smart person, but I mean, like, the money has driven the economy, though, right? At some level,
it will play a role in driving adoption.
Yeah,
but if I think years from now that's the whole conversation, then we failed.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I totally agree.
There has to be more than that.
Yeah.
I think even just being part of it, it's like, even like for me right now, I just see decentralization everywhere. Like it's on my mind all the time. I can't get off my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, the government needs to be decentralized. Yeah, you know what? This parenting thing, let's decentralize it. Like everything in my mind is like, dude, everything works better decentralized. I mean, I'm even thinking about just like, thinking about like the End SARS protests, right? You know, all these like government leaders being like, oh, where's the leader? Let's speak to the leader, blah. There is no leader. It's decentralized, like everything. And it's just like, it's one of those things where when you kind of, and I don't even think I fully immersed myself into blockchain yet. I'm so busy. I'm like half in. But even with that 1 foot in, I'm just like, and it's like, I think it's going to be really, really important learning how to talk to people about it. Because it's like, for me, right, I feel it, but then I'm like, I speak to people and it's like, yeah, it's blockchain. Yeah, it's this, and you know, I think, how do we get that across? So getting right. So there's a good thing here. So perhaps next week we'll be talking about the disadvantages of decentralization, because here we are raving about it, and there's got to be things that are like.
I want to jump in real quick too, because we have a little while left. There was a huge event that happened this past week, and I just want to congratulate my friend DC Dewayne Cameron for the project that they submitted to the hackathon. DC, can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because that's, and give us the full context, because that's huge. It's an amazing thing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks, man. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate that. Yeah, so, you know, we've kind of talked about Liquid on the podcast and what our team is building. Kind of in general, it's a decentralized lending and borrowing protocol on Cardano. So anyone can access it for a loan, or if they have some asset that's on Cardano, can earn interest on that asset by depositing it so that other people can use it for loans. We basically entered this hackathon. It was a United Nations backed hackathon challenge called Blockchain Finance for Social Good. And there's a group of 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that they have. And we kind of, we thought about Liquid in this financial DeFi protocol that we're building, and how does it address some of the different UN goals that they had. And we thought about 3 specific ones that dealt with just access to financing at affordable costs, access to basically value creation that everyone can own a piece of, especially those who are faced with diaspora. And we just wanted to kind of pose Liquid as this alternative solution that, in its final form, right, when we create things like embedding Altala Prism, so there's decentralized identity notions, and embedding some concept of credit so people can actually build credit scores and use those to back 0% collateral loans. All these kind of things that we have in the West when it comes to peer-to-peer financing and, you know, credit card concepts. if we can build a system like that on chain, or even attempt to do it on Cardano, that is what the Liquid team is all about exploring. And as a result of this hackathon, we built basically the 5 smart contracts that will underpin our system using Marlowe. It's a domain-specific language for finance built on top of Plutus, which is Cardano's smart contract layer. We submitted those. It's all open source code, so anyone can go to our GitHub and take a look at those contracts and even just copy and paste them into the Marlowe playground and run them and see how they kind of interact with different situations and scenarios. We submitted that and we got first place. And I think that from this, we've learned so much about developing in Marlowe and Plutus, and we're excited to.
You got what?
Number 1, first place. Yeah. So it was exciting. No, and our developers, they're so amped up about this. And moving forward, Liquid has big plans. We're launching an entire protocol on Cardano. We're trying to build an ecosystem, and it's been a wild ride the last couple of months. And I can't thank the team enough. Josh, Tashoma, Mati, Tin. I don't want to leave out Tony, who's Tony from Shoshone. Is actually a great guy. He's a teacher in Wyoming, an IT teacher, and he helped us, in terms of putting together our pitch deck and our solution for the UN and what that looked like, and all these things, all these concepts. It really was a team effort to get there. So I don't want to leave any of those guys out. So thank you to everyone. I really do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congrats.
Thank you.
That feels really like, I'm just like, yeah, cool. Like,
I can say this: Cardano is coming. There will be so many liquids and apps and decentralized networks on the system, guys. Like, we are truly at this, like, think about this. We are just getting to Voltaire, right? This concept of Goguen and smart contracts, and then Basho and updates to the system, and Hydra and scaling. We haven't even gotten there yet. We're really at the start of something great. And I want Liquid, if anything, to serve as the future of this system. What can be built on top of Cardano? And we talk about it every week on this AfroFinLab, but it's a whole world of decentralized applications, and it's coming. So it's exciting.
All right, guys. Well, on that very exciting note, we've got a couple minutes, and I just literally want 1 minute from everyone. Your last words, your last point what you took from this talk.
I think I'll jump in there first.
I'm gonna like literally cut you off at 1 minute. So
it's like, I'm letting you know. So have you started already? No, I'm just kidding.
Right,
I think what's really cool is everyone that's on the panel, that we've been able to talk to, and just realizing like this type of collaboration that's starting to occur, like this conversation that we're having. It's really exciting. I mean, the future is there to be created, and just that everybody's kind of on the same page, with the excitement and the possibilities and enjoying these types of conversations, I think is really, really cool. I think I took a lot from this one. This was, in my opinion, a really great episode here. But I think what kind of stuck out to me was the collaboration that's starting to happen, or that's happening.
All right, that's actually 1 minute. So who's next?
I don't know if it's a point or what it is, but I will say today I watched, I don't know if you guys have seen David Attenborough's A Life on Our Planet. And he's talking about, our planet warming up, the issues of, I guess, not being eco-friendly that are occurring in our world. And at the end of it, I saw so many, like, he was talking about solutions that we can do to fix some of the issues that are in our world. And so many of them I saw possible through blockchain. So I don't know if you guys want to even give it a go. Watch the documentary and think about blockchain, and you will see there are so many ways in which blockchain can help, again, so many of the issues that are occurring in our world. So yeah, and on your point, Sidney, I think it is great how like people like us can connect from all over the world because of this thing, blockchain technology, that is going to hopefully change our world for all of us for the better, which that's how I see blockchain at the moment. So yeah.
The blockchain is going to change our world for the better. Next.
I'll jump in.
1 minute left.
Yeah, I mean, so Aziz told us that he's a model and a DJ, and pandemic came, and now he's learning about blockchain, which is amazing. But let's all agree that listening to music and dancing with your friends is a lot better than programming computers, right? And so we always remember what it's about, right? And so it's always coming back to, hey, why are we doing this in the first place? We're building a world where people can thrive and do the things that really matter, right? Sidney, I'm worried about our kids. My son plays Minecraft too. And are we going to be that generation that says, back in my day, I played with my friends, right? I played outside, right? So Azeezat, when I hear you say that you're just getting started with blockchain, you have a very rich life with so many other things that fill up your time. If blockchain eats all of those things up, something actually went wrong there, right? What we have to do is we have to figure out, how do we use this technology in a way that helps us all thrive in all the ways that we actually really truly want to thrive, right? And so I hope that every time we come together to do this work, we're never getting lost in that conversation of thinking that it's about blockchain for the sake of blockchain, right? But we're always kind of remembering, hey, this is what I love to do, and this is why I'm here.
Roberto, I'm gonna invite
Absolutely. I want to thank you all, and I just want to say that I feel that we are on a good boat, and we need this kind of conversations with people from different backgrounds, with interdisciplinary skills. Oh, sorry.
We can still hear you.
Okay. So I was saying that this is the way I think we truly evolve. We having Azeezat, DC with his finance background, Aziz with another different perspective, and I think this is a good boat. We are all in the same boat in the end, and I think we will get there. We will be the white hat magicians of the future of blockchain.
All right. So on that note, I want to thank everybody for joining us, everyone for tuning in. We are, I know, happy to be here, and we'll see you next week when we'll be talking about the disadvantages of decentralization. Perhaps. All right. All right. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everyone.